Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're having a slightly different format for inquiry time today. It's a mixture of present tense and inquiry time. And that is because Ashwani is leaving in 2 weeks' time. And we thought it would be nice for him to tell us a bit about what he's been doing and what his impressions are of his time at Brockwood. Now, Ashwani got in contact with us about a year ago to ask if he could come. And from time to time, we have emails from people wanting to come to Brockwood from all over the world and spend time with us. But we can't accept everybody, and so we make it very difficult. We take time to answer their emails. We ask them lots of difficult questions. And we keep talking to them for quite a while before we take that decision. But Ashwani was very persistent, and so he was able to come, and I think, I hope you will agree, it's been marvellous having him here. Some of you may not realise he's an assistant professor at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax in Canada, and he did his PhD at the University of British Columbia. But he's going to tell us about all that, and he will also be asking us questions. So please pay attention, and we can ask him questions. Okay, thank you, Ashwani.
Well, thanks, Will. There are going to be 3 parts of my talk. I want to begin with a relaxation exercise. You have all been working. Sunday is generally a very busy day. So I would like to begin with a relaxation exercise. And then I will share my journey, which brought me here at Brockwood Park. And then finally, I'm going to share my impressions of Brockwood Park, because I have been here for over 3 months now. So are you guys ready for a relaxation exercise? Yeah. Sit comfortably. Preferably, your back should be straight, but relaxed. Your neck should be relaxed, very relaxed. No strain at all. And if you don't mind, please close your eyes. Now begin to exhale deeply, but slowly. Just exhale, don't inhale. Inhalation will come on its own. Simply exhale, preferably from your nose. Very deep exhalations, and inhalation will happen on its own. Now begin to observe your body from the very bottom, from the toe, and slowly move upward through your legs, through stomach, through chest, through face, to the top of your head. Body is generally very, very silent. In spite of all the movement that is going on in the body, it's a very complex organism, and it is moving very, very fast all the time. But still in that movement there is a harmony and silence. But in the modern civilization, due to a lot of suppression of the body, and also due to a lot of indulgence of the body, it has become very, very restless. And that's why most people find it very difficult to sit quietly. So it's nothing wrong. But if you sit silently, that gives you an assessment of your body, an understanding of your body, that if it is tense, then you have to understand why it is tense. Because sitting silently or lying down silently and quietly and observing is natural. But it has become a hard work for us or struggle for us, because body has become very, very unnatural because of our social systems. Now if you observe it very gently, don't strain yourself at all. Come to your breath. Your breath will give you a lot of understanding about your mind. If you're angry, it affects your breath. It becomes very fast. If you are fearful, your breath will happen in a different way. If you are silent and quiet, your breath has a very gracious movement. It's very deep and slow. So watch it, but don't try to make it slow or deep. Just watch it. The beauty is if you watch it very, very carefully, it becomes deep and slow on its own. Now come back to your brain. Brain is basically the constant movement. It is a dynamo that is moving all the time, day in and day out. It is never silent, whether you are asleep or awake. And you can basically say all our desires, conflicts, images, love, hate, jealousy, happiness, this whole movement is this movement of the brain. So basically you, what you call yourself is nothing, or what I call myself is nothing but this constant movement of the brain. Now you can ask yourself, can this movement become aware of itself? Because it is very, very mechanical, unless in certain exceptional circumstances. It keeps moving on its own. It doesn't depend on you. So can this movement, which is yourself, watch itself, become aware of itself? Because these movements also affect your body. The stress of this movement is also responsible for the stress of your body. Now these three things, body, breath and mind, brain, are not different. This is whole one thing, whole movement. Now can you very quietly, gently, without stress, be aware of the whole thing? One of the beauty of Brockwood Park is, then if you are silent, then you can listen to the silence here. It's a very, very, very special place, very, very sacred place. If you can be quiet, the silence is there pervading all over. But we need to become quiet, a little bit quiet. Now I'm going to bring you out of this. Start breathing deeply but slowly. Breathe very, very deeply but slowly. Couple of more breaths. Now open your eyes and just look in the horizon. Don't focus on anything. Just look without focusing on anything. Thank you very much. Meditation has been a central aspect of my life. And by meditation, I just don't mean this relaxation exercise. It actually tells you all the complexes and all the complexities that we as human beings carry within ourselves day after day. But meditation also means inquiring into this complexity. And my inquiry into this complexity began when I was a teenager like you. But unfortunately, I didn't have this kind of an environment where the inquiry was possible. My first introduction to meditation or inquiry began when I was in high school. And I don't know, most of you, some of you might have heard of a name called Kabir. Kabir was a medieval mystic and poet from India. And I just saw in the center, there is a book called Songs of Kabir. It's a translation by a very famous Indian poet and one of the best literary figures of all time, Rabindranath Tagore. Tagore translated some of Kabir's songs. Now what I found exciting, and at that time not knowing much, as probably most of you don't know much what is happening here, but it is going to impact your life when you leave. I realized it when I came to know how radical Kabir was, and he was questioning everything that society has considered important and religious or spiritual. And he was showing a way of negation, of questioning everything. And for my surprise, I became free of all the superstitions and religious propaganda very early on in my age. Not that anybody was imposing those on me, but I became very free without much effort or unnecessary struggle with anyone. This journey continued, but rather unconsciously, until I came across a book in Hindi called Dhyan Sutra. Its English translation could be Principles of Meditation. The book was was based on the lectures of a spiritual teacher from India, very controversial, but very insightful, Osho. And I began to read Osho very intensively. And it was while reading Osho that I came to know of Krishnamurti, because he talks about Krishnamurti quite often. But when I tried to pick up Krishnamurti's book, I could not understand. And two factors contributed to that, and that was my early 20s when I started reading Osho. So why Krishnamurti didn't make sense? One is because my English was not as good at that time, because I started learning English when I was 18 years of age. English used to be as a subject, but English was not happening, neither in my family nor in my locality or in my school. So Krishnamurti was very, very difficult, although he uses very simple language. What frustrated me most, which probably wouldn't frustrate anyone if one comes to Brockwood Park, that in my school or in my university, there wasn't any scope of inquiry, of understanding why are we living or why are we doing whatever we are doing. So the inquiry, for you it is a collective process. For me it was very individual. I have a couple of friends with whom I could inquire and talk about these issues, but mostly it was very, very personal and individual. And with this kind of makeup where I was trying to question everything, I ended up in a school, not because I wanted to be a teacher or that I wanted to teach, but I needed money. So I started teaching in a school. I was teaching geography and social studies in general. And there I saw the problem of education, which I have been questioning all through, that it should not be teacher-centered, that it should be dialogical, that there should be deeper issues that should be part of education, and then education shouldn't just be transaction of information from the teachers to the students, whether in an interesting way or in a boring way. The purpose of education should be much larger and deeper. I left the school after a year without knowing what is it that I am going to do. But I ended up, because of a pressure from a professor, right pressure, I ended up giving an entrance to a education college, the Bachelor of Education. And I started doing my bachelor's degree in education. And within a week, it became clear to me that all my questions can be focused in the field of education. Because the purpose of the field of education, to me, is to bring about the transformation of human beings. And what could be a better area other than education? So within a week, I knew that I'm going to stay in this field, and that was in 2003 or 2004. Now, it was in the education library at the University of Delhi where I came across Krishnamurti's books again, 10, 12 books. And what I did during my stay at the education department is to primarily read Krishnamurti's books. And I really became very, very interested in the way he perceives consciousness and the way he understands the notion of meditation, which is very, very different from the mostly accepted notions, and the passion he had for the transformation and the emphasis that he gave to the role of education in bringing about this transformation. So that time onward, I really became focused on understanding Krishnamurti, and I tried to bring him a little bit in my master's thesis, where I claimed that although the social transformation is very, very important, and I'm very interested in it, but it cannot be brought about unless there is also a personal transformation, because individual and society are not two things. It is one movement, but we try to split it and create misery for ourselves. With this understanding, I did masters and taught in the same school for 2 years. I did masters part-time. And then I decided to go abroad to do PhD. Some of my teachers recommended it, that if I really want to pursue academics, then it is better, because education field as a field of research is not very well developed in India. So they suggested that I should go out and study, and that brought me to University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And there, in the beginning, I was not sure whether I'm going to write a thesis on Krishnamurti. So I was doing something and bringing a little bit of Krishnamurti here and there, but soon I realized that because of two reasons. One, I was questioned that I shouldn't bring Krishnamurti because he doesn't belong in the academia. And second, it became clear to me that unless I bring Krishnamurti in academia, there are so many questions which are unanswered. For example, for academia, thought is most important. Intellectual advancement, advancement of the thought. Without understanding that the instrument which we are using to advance itself may be faulty, which is Krishnamurti's main idea, main understanding, that thought in itself is fragmentary. So whatever it does is fragmentary. So how can you depend on something, some instrument which in itself is problematic or has brought about so many problematic things in our society? So I decided to do a thesis on Krishnamurti, and luckily I got a very senior professor, very world-renowned professor, William Pinar, who really helped me. He questioned me and challenged me a lot, but he never suppressed me. So I could do a thesis on Krishnamurti. Now what I did in my thesis, very briefly, one point that I stressed, and it is heavily influenced by my readings of Krishnamurti, one point that I stressed was that human consciousness is in crisis, is in conflict. And this is not a philosophical statement. Even in a minute of relaxation exercise that we did, we could see how our brain is moving. It is constantly moving. It is a movement of conflicts and images and desires all the time. So this is not very difficult to understand, that the human consciousness is in crisis. And interestingly, this crisis is not limited to itself. Whatever it does, it brings about crisis. And all the social problems that we see, the religious conflicts and the racial conflicts and the ecological crisis, they all are connected with how human beings have interacted with one another and with the environment. So that was my first point, that the consciousness is in crisis. And this crisis is reflected and perpetuated through education. So education and consciousness are not two different things. Education is basically the movement of this consciousness. For example, fear, if you observe yourself, you will see that one of the reasons why we act, why we do things, is because of fear. Fear affects and influences most of the things we do. If we go deeply, we will see it. And if you see in education, fear has a very important place. By means of discipline, by means of authority, by means of conformity, which you, I think, and I have seen, try to challenge to the best you can, so that students don't do things because of fear, that they do things because they really want to do it, because they are really interested in it, and they love it. But in public education system, it is the fear that controls, and fear can be very subtle. It can be fear of success, of not succeeding, of not getting what you want. It is very, very subtle. And if you see the movement of your life daily, you will see how significant a role it plays. The another factor, another